Hi, I'm Brad, Program Coordinator at Reef Check Hawai, and today we're going to talk about coral bleaching. Before we get into bleaching, we're going to start off by talking about coral anatomy. What is coral bleaching? How to distinguish between bleaching and recent mortality? What is a degree heating week and why it is important? And finally, we'll look through NOAA's Coral Reef Watch satellite monitoring and modeled outlook. To begin, let's talk about that coral anatomy. Coral feeds on plankton, which is drifting by, and they use these tentacles here, similar to like an anemone, to capture their prey by firing off these little pneumatocysts. Think of like a little harpoon that they fire out, sting their prey, and then they pull their prey into their mouth with these tentacles, goes into their gastrovascular cavity, and then they deposit out this calcium carbonate skeleton. They have little corallites around them as well, which they form, which is that calcium carbonate, kind of provides this little bit of protective like skeleton for them that they can retract into as their predators get close. But they don't just feed on plankton that's floating by. They also have this symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae algae. It's a mutualism relationship. Zooxanthellae is a algae that lives inside their cell walls, and this algae uses some nutrients that pass through the coral polyp, as well as sunlight and carbon dioxide produced by the coral polyp to photosynthesize, creating sugars, which in some cases can make up to 80% of a coral polyp's food. In addition to the food that it produces and energy for the coral polyp, zooxanthellae also produces oxygen through that photosynthesis process, which the coral polyp uses. And finally, in addition to that, all of that, it also is what gives the coral its color. Like I said, food, oxygen, and its color. Here's a picture, a close-up shot of coral polyp here. You can see its little tentacles right here in space. Another shot of some lobe coral here. You can see its tentacles. If we look over on this one, you can see its mouth here. This is those corallites I was talking about. They have this connected tissue that kind of connects the coral polyps here. That's why you see a little coloration here as well. And again, another coral polyp. So what is bleaching? Well, remember that zooxanthellae produces food, oxygen, and color for the coral polyp. What happens during a bleaching event is coral polyps come under stress for a variety of reasons, but primarily through a rise in ocean temperature. Creates an environment that zooxanthellae algae can no longer live inside the coral polyp. We're not going to get into all the in-depth reasons as to why and how that kind of occurs, but we'll just say ocean temperature is rising, and some of the byproducts of that, the coral polyps become under stress and the zooxanthellae can't survive anymore, so it's released out into the water column. And when that happens, remember this coral bleaching now is going to lose its food. Okay, remember that zooxanthellae is photosynthesizing, so it'll lose food. It's going to lose that oxygen that is just readily produced and available there by the zooxanthellae. It's also going to lose its color. At this point, the coral polyp is alive, but it's starving. And it's going to look almost like translucent or white, because all we're seeing now is instead of this colorful, vibrant coral colony, what we're seeing is one that is under stress. It's completely white because there's none of that symbiotic algae in there anymore. And again, it's starving away. So we look on the left here. Here is a photo of, again, a healthy coral colony. And on the right side, we're going to see one that's under stress and in the process of bleaching. And as you can see here, we've got these polyps. Now, I do understand these are two different species of coral. The one on the left is a lobe coral, and the one on the right that is bleaching out is a rice coral. But you can see the polyps here. There's the mouth. You see the tentacles and all that, but still alive. Okay, it's just, again, starving because a lot of its food is not available to it. It's just hoping more plankton can drift by, or the ocean temperatures cool down to a point where that zooxanthellae can recruit back into the coral polyp, giving it that symbiotic relationship again. Here's another picture of a bleached coral, one in the process of bleaching, and another one here. And another one here in the process. Here's another close-up shot. As you can see, bleaching is a process that runs kind of through the colony, generally from like the top of it down, but it's a process over time. It doesn't just all bleach all at once. It just takes a bit of time for it to bleach through. And so you can see over here, some of these polyps still have a little bit of color left to them. There's still a little bit of algae that hasn't bleached out yet, but these guys here are definitely feeling the bleaching. Remember, bleached coral doesn't mean it's dead. And remember that white coral doesn't mean it's bleached. And if we take like even a closer look here, we can see this here. This is not a bleached colony. It's not during experiencing bleaching. This is actually just dead coral here. It's been recently killed. Was likely through some type of predation in this instance, but basically you can see here we have, well, the coral is white right here. You can see the little bit of skeleton and stuff like that. There's actually no polyps. You look off to the right here, you can see the polyps here. Over here, there's no polyps. What you also see is there is an algae, filamentous algae, it looks like, starting to grow, which would be an indicator that the coral polyp is dead, or the coral colony in this area is completely dead. Algae, this filamentous algae starting to grow on it. If we take a look here, we've got, again, some healthy coral versus bleached coral. To give another look, we've got healthy coral versus recently killed coral. Again, there's no coral polyps when it's been recently killed. Now, at some point during a bleaching event, if the coral ends up starving, it will die, and then it will just turn into this calcium carbonate skeleton only, and there won't be any polyps. But so here's healthy versus recently killed. Here is bleached. Again, you can see the polyps versus recently killed. You can't see any polyps. Another shot of some recently killed coral. You can see there's a little skeleton here. The corallites are kind of eroded a little bit here, probably scraped off by some type of predation from maybe like a crown of thorn sea star. Eventually, after coral has been predated upon, or during a bleaching event, if it is sustained long enough that the coral polyp actually starves to death and does die, that coral structure, that coral colony, is no longer around, and eventually it all just becomes rock, an available substrate. And as you can see, that available substrate is where new coral can start to recruit to. So all is not lost, but it does make for a huge challenge to our reef ecosystem when we go through these bleaching events where coral does die off. It takes a long time for coral to start to grow back, especially to get to the size that some of our larger colonies get to. And these coral colonies, like this one right here, is competing on space on this rock for competing for space with algae, with sponge, with other substrate hydroids in that as it tries to go and grow. Okay, so we've kind of talked a little bit about bleaching and all of that, and now we'll go ahead and get into a little more of the science in this tool through Coral Reef Watch that NOAA has, and we'll kind of walk through that. But first off, I just kind of want to talk through what like a degree heating week is, because that's kind of a measurement that is used by scientists to really understand or to determine like the severity of a bleaching event. So basically, scientists identify the maximum monthly mean of sea surface temperature for a reef location, basically the warmest it usually gets. And that maximum monthly mean sea surface temperature in this graph here, which we'll get into more, is this dashed blue line that you see here. For us here in Hawaii, that's sitting at 27 degrees Celsius. Anytime the water is greater than 1 degree or equal to 1 degree Celsius warmer than the max monthly mean sea surface temperature, it contributes to heat stress. And so that's where we take a look at this dark blue line here, or this solid blue line right here, not the dark one, this solid blue line here running across the graph. So that's where, that's kind of the threshold where heat stress begins, generally speaking. And then the stress is accumulated over time. So for example, if the water is 1 degree Celsius above the max monthly mean sea surface temperature for 1 week, we'll multiply those two numbers. So 1 degree Celsius, 1 week, 1 times 1 equals 1 degree heat week. If it's 2 degrees Celsius above the max monthly mean sea surface temperature for 1 week, then we take that 2 degrees Celsius above times the 1 week, and that gives us 2 degree heat weeks. If it's 1 degree Celsius above the max monthly mean sea surface temperature for 2 weeks, then it's that 1 degree Celsius times the 2 weeks gives us 2 degree heat weeks. And then, of course, if we had 2 degrees Celsius above the max monthly mean sea surface temperature for 2 weeks, we multiply those together, that will give us 4 degree heat weeks. You can see on the graph here, we measure degree heating weeks over here, and we'll get into that just a little bit on another graph here once we get into the tool. Right here, we have our sea surface temperature. And then we have our months of the year here. Okay. So we're going to pivot over to the tool itself here, and we're going to start by getting into the severity of degree heat weeks. This is just coralreefwatch.noaa.gov, a tremendous tool, and we'll just walk through a couple parts of it here. But if we come down, I'm just going to read you basically what this is and define a degree heat week a little bit better for us and the severity of it. So the NOAA Coral Reef Watch Daily Global 5-kilometer satellite coral bleaching degree heating week product presented here shows acclimated or accumulated heat stress, which can lead to coral bleaching and death. The scale ranges from 0 to 20 degrees Celsius weeks. The degree heating week product accumulates the instantaneous bleaching heat stress measured by CRW's coral bleaching hotspot during the most recent 12-week period. It is directly related to the timing and intensity of coral bleaching. There's risk of coral bleaching when the degree heating weeks value reaches 4 degrees Celsius weeks. By the time the degree heating weeks value reaches 8 degrees Celsius weeks, reef-wide coral bleaching with mortality of heat-sensitive corals is likely. If the accumulated heat stress continues to build further and exceeds a degree heat week value of 12 degrees Celsius weeks, multiple species mortality becomes likely. And a degree heating week greater than or equal to 16 degree Celsius weeks, there is a risk of severe multi-species mortality in over 50% of corals. And at a degree heating week greater than or equal to 20 degrees Celsius weeks, near complete mortality in greater than 80% of corals is likely. So the higher that degree heating week is, the greater the mortality is. If we were to look back at that graph, but in a little bit different way here, we can just, that graph that I had shown earlier, if we go into our virtual stations, and we'll come down to our daily 5K kilometer regional virtual stations. We'll scroll down to the main Hawaiian Islands product here. You can see that we have all the products available for all over the world. So depending on where you are, you can use this tool in a similar way to find what you may be looking for. So if we go to the main Hawaiian Islands, the first thing we'll do, I'm just going to go to this multi-year graph here. Oops, we're going to go to the thermal stress gauge actually. We'll get to this in a second, but just to show you that degree heating weeks and kind of this thing. So in Hawaii, we had our last kind of significant bleaching event was in 2019. And if we just take a look at this graph here, you'll see, so this is 2018 leading into 2019. You'll see our temperatures start to spike here in 2018. It kind of peaks over the top there just for a little blip there over that 27 degrees Celsius or 28 degree Celsius mark, which is our bleaching threshold for sea surface temperature. Comes back down, and then you'll see it comes and spikes back up again here in 2019. And this is where we had our mortality event. If we look at this and we watch the orange line as it peaks up, we get above that 10, 11, 12, we're into 13 degree heating weeks up here. Here's our scale. So that kind of just shows you, yes, we had some bleaching mortality that was occurring, and here's kind of the graphical analysis of it. If we look back to that 2015 bleaching, in 2014 had a little bit that occurs. The sea surface temperature comes back down. It does come back up here, 2015, and you can see again a more sustained bleaching event occurring, which was pretty severe for us out here. Okay. In addition to that, let's get into this other really cool tool here, which is the thermal temperature gauge. And what we're looking at, this is, as of this recording, goes back a couple days to September 18th, 2025. This first gauge here, this little photo here is relevant to this gauge, and you'll see that we're currently under a coral bleaching alert level. This is our current status. And basically, it's kind of taking the information within these squares, but that are inside the black outline here. So it's kind of taking into account, okay, what is in here? What is the level? Is it a watch, warning, alert level? What is the water temperature? And then a different outlook. So this is our current snapshot here. 1 to 4 weeks out, we kind of zoom out a little bit, and it takes again into account all of these squares. and it's providing us with an alert level 1 is what it's calculating out. As we look to 5 to 8 weeks out, you can see there's a warm blob up above us that has potential to kind of run near us and affect us. So we're at alert level 2 for weeks 5 to 8 and then 9 to 12 weeks out. So again, our current, we have weeks 1 to 4, outlook for weeks 1 to 4, 1 to 4 weeks out, weeks 5 to 8 out, right here, weeks 9 to 12, weeks 9 to 12. So kind of a cool tool to be able to take a look. If we were to change our date and take a look at a different time, let's say we went back to, I don't know, let's take a look at March. You can see there's no stress occurring. If we went ahead and looked into July, no stress in the current moment on July 18th, 2025, but there is a little bit of a watch happening, and 5 to 8 weeks out, a warning, 9 to 12 weeks out, we have our alert level 1 status. So now if we go back to our current date here, back to that 9/18/2025, you'll see the data there. Okay. Now, one thing I do kind of want to talk about, we're going to go into this multi-year graph, and I just want to give like this view here, this just kind of a thought to leave us with here today. So if you look here on the right side, you'll see this is by year. So this is our months here. We've got our sea surface temperature here, and what we're watching basically. And degree heating weeks over on this side here, which is going to tell us what's happening with these orange and yellow lines, the watches, the warnings, and all that. But basically, if we take a look at this here, the dark blue is back in like 1985, and as we get closer to today's date, and the black line is 2025, you'll see it kind of like runs in like this rainbow kind of pattern. So what I want to just say is, as we take a look at this, and this is, to me, just an interesting, little piece of information. Look at our sea surface temperatures down here towards the bottom. I definitely am seeing, to my eye, I see more of the like purples, blues, and greens, but I don't see a whole lot of those like reds and yellows. And as I look a little bit higher, in a little bit warmer area, I don't see a whole lot of those blues and purples and greens. I see consistently a lot more of like the reds and the yellows and oranges. And to me, what this signifies is that since like 1985, like we are seeing, a trend potentially of sea surface temperatures just rising over time. And you can kind of, again, see that here where the blues are down here. Not all that way. There's a little bit of crossover. You see some green blips up here. But just overall in general, it kind of looks like that a little bit when I look at the graph. So anyways, I'm going to leave you with that. The other thing that I do want to just actually mention, just overall as we get back to the presentation here, one of the things that I do just kind of want to get into is sea surface temperature. That model, the sea surface temperature, is just capturing the sea surface temperature. As we all know, coral lives below the surface, and in that benthic, on the bottom, seafloor. And so sometimes like our seafloor bottom isn't the same as we know as divers. If you're a diver and you're watching this, or a snorkeler, when you're down below, it's a little bit different temperature sometimes than it is right on the very surface. But that is just kind of a tool, that Coral Reef Watch tool by NOAA, that helps us determine, when water is flowing. across. That warm water is flowing across. Anyways, I want to leave you. Here's a couple resources for you. We've got the coralreefwatch.noaa.gov. You can go to Linktree, Reef Check Hawai. We've got a bunch of different information there. As well as you can go to reefcheck.org/Hawaii. If you do go onto our Linktree, you can go ahead and scroll down on the Linktree. We have a little tool where you can report coral bleaching directly to us, so we can go out and survey. Let's go ahead, enter in the information there. Let us know you're not a robot, and go ahead and hit send there. I'd love for you to join us on our next talk on marine herbivores of Hawaii. That's going to be Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025, from 6 to 7 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. I'll have a link in the notes section of the video. And again, thank you. Appreciate your time.